Here we go. Welcome into the San Francisco 49ers Report. I'm Chase Sr., and no matter where you are or how you're tuned in, as always, I greatly appreciate you for making today's show a part of your day. And on the rundown for today, we are going to preview this huge NFC West matchup between the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. And we're going to be live for this game right here on the San Francisco 49ers Report, the best place to experience a Niners game day outside of being at the actual game. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us. We'll be live for an extended pregame show. Special programming alert. Show gets underway 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you there. Stage is set for this ball game, and anytime the Rams and the Niners clash, it's always an epic battle. And these are two teams vying for playoff positioning who do not like one another. Kickoff is slated for Thursday at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, 8:15 p.m. Eastern, 5:15 p.m. Pacific in Northern California. The over-under at 48.5, so we could see some points scored between two of these offenses that when they play up to their level of potential, they're really damn good. At San Francisco, the home team, 2-point favorites, a very close and intriguing line right there. We, of course, have to give you a look at the NFC West standings. The Seattle Seahawks really taking a somewhat commanding lead in this division with their play over the last month. It all started with that comeback against San Francisco. They were dead in that ball game. Nick Bosa goes out. Geno Smith and the offense comes alive. They stun the Niners at home as San Francisco does not have a good home record this year. And since that point, they have not lost. The Seahawks could look back at that game and say, that was the launching point and the turning point for our season under a rookie head coach in Mike Macdonald. So having won 4 games in a row, Seattle 8-5, 3-2 in the NFC West. The Rams, second place. They've been hot of late. More on that in a moment. 7-6, 2-1 inside this division. The Cardinals, 6-7. They've lost 3 games in a row. Kyler Murray always seems to collapse late in the year. And that Arizona team, that's their identity right now. It's up to them to change it. They're 2-2, even 500 inside this division. And the 49ers, 6-7. They ended their 3-game losing streak against the Bears, only 1-3. Inside the NFC West. And so that divisional record has hurt San Francisco. And you know what's crazy? Those 3 losses, the Niners had a lead with under 2 minutes to go in each of them. Lost against the Rams in week 3, lost against the Cardinals in week 5, lost against Seattle a few weeks ago. So the NFC playoff picture looks as such. The Seahawks, the number 3 seed in the conference right now at 8-5, behind 11-2 Philadelphia. They've won 9 games in a row behind the 12-1 Detroit Lions. They've won 11 games in a row. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers now in first place of the NFC South because the Falcons are starting to collapse here. Kirk Cousins is playing awful football. The Niners need to stay away from him. And then the 3 wildcard teams, 2 of which from the best division in football, the NFC North. Minnesota Vikings, 11-2, still a matchup remaining against Detroit. And then the Packers at 9-4, and the Washington Commanders out of the NFC East at 8-5. And so the teams in the mix there, you see the Rams at 7-6, right behind Washington. You look at San Francisco, they're in that next class alongside Atlanta and Arizona with 4 weeks left to play in the regular season. And I'll tell you what, Rams are dangerous. Last year they got hot to end the season. They've been hot over the last 8 games. And they're putting together and looking like the team that ended November and December playing really good football a year ago. 6-2 in their last 8 games. Had maybe the most impressive win of the entire NFL season, outlasting the Buffalo Bills in a crazy game, 44-42. 86 combined points scored in that game. Both teams putting up crazy yardage totals. And this is a Rams club that has quality wins over really good teams. Vikings might be a top 5 team in the NFL. The Bills are a top 5 team in the NFL, and that's 2 wins of the 7 for Los Angeles this year. And in that win against Buffalo, Matthew Stafford was slinging it, making some excellent throws, very efficient, 23 of 30, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, a passer rating which was nearly perfect, around 145. Puka Nacua had 12 catches, 6 carries, 162 receiving yards, and a touchdown. His running mate at wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, 5 grabs, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Rams found success on the ground as well. Kyron Williams running it 29 times for 87 yards. He found the paint twice. The Rams defense, they did struggle in this game. Josh Allen, 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, 6 total touchdowns on the day. He accounted for every single score that Buffalo had in that game. It was an MVP performance that could have won him MVP by season's end in a loss. A look back at how this game transpired between the Niners and the Rams back in Week 3. Let's do that next. If you remember, and a lot of us do, because we still have a sour taste in our mouths seeing the Niners choke this game away. San Francisco took a quick 14-0 lead. Jawan Jennings, 2 dimes from Brock Purdy. A third Jawan Jennings touchdown, as he had a hat trick that day, made it 21-7 Niners. So San Francisco was up by 2 touchdowns, 14 points. You're thinking they're going to roll. And this was after they lost badly to Minnesota in a game where they had turnovers, they had penalties, they didn't play up to their caliber. That's ended up being really the story for the Niners in 2024. And with the Rams down big, Sean McVay right around midfield calls a fake punt. And against this lackluster special teams unit for the Niners, they convert. That gave a dead team life, and from there, momentum flipped in the ball game. Matthew Stafford sensed blood against this Niners secondary, which had a few communication and scheme breakdowns that day, and he was throwing some long balls downfield, and San Francisco outscored the Niners 20-10 after recess. But do the Niners have more momentum now than they did in that previous matchup? Think about what they did against Chicago. And some people will say, Chase, the Bears stink. They have a top 10 overall defense. And so while they might stink record-wise, in the previous weeks prior to playing the Niners, they nearly beat the Packers, Vikings, and Lions. Don't just be lazy and box score hunt, all right? Actually do some research, watch some ball, and this is a Bears team that had a top 10 defense going into that game, and the Niners hung 38 points on them. I thought Kyle Shanahan had his best play calling and play designing and game managing game of the season. I'll get to that a little bit later. Brock Purdy, he cooked against Chicago, completing passes at all 3 levels vertically and from sideline to sideline. He looked awesome, and the shoulder looked good because he was uncorking some long balls. The Niners' defense came to play. They tackled well. They stopped the run. They didn't give up explosive plays. Where has that been all year? Against the Bears team that has some weapons on the offensive side of the football. Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Caleb Williams. And so I actually take some positives away from that Niners victory, and that is what San Francisco should look like. Unfortunately, might be too little too late. It took until Week 14 for them to play their most complete game of the year, play a dominant ball game for all 60 minutes, and find an identity. Niners still could be shorthanded in this game against Los Angeles. Nick Bosa still dealing with that oblique as we record this on Tuesday, December 10th. Trent Williams dealing with that ankle, although Jalen Moore has stepped in very well. And for Nick Bosa, how about your Turgros Matos with 3 sacks, a career high against the Bears on Sunday. Isaac Guerrero, a foot sprain. He's day-to-day, but on a short week, might not be able to play in this game. So if he can't, Patrick Taylor will get the start at running back. Dre Greenlaw might be able to make a season debut. You just never know with that Achilles. And then Aaron Banks dealing with a concussion over the last couple of weeks. He has clear concussion protocol. He will be back at left guard. His backup, Ben Barch, has a high ankle sprain. He's landed on injured reserve. Plenty more to get to. We're only starting to take flight for our Rams-Niners preview. But let me ask you this. You see the question? If you're away from the TV, run back to the TV and let me know who you got. LAR for the Rams. SF for the 49ers. Get those predictions in. I'll unveil my score prediction coming up at the end of the show. Our sponsor for today's program, Niners, Rams, preview. Our friends at Game Time. Holiday season is coming up. Whether it's Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, another holiday that you celebrate. If you want to get a loved one something special, how about tickets to a Niners game? If you want to get them some early Christmas or early holiday gifts, One of those gifts could be tickets to Thursday Night Football at Levi's Stadium between San Francisco and LA. Last-minute tickets at the lowest price guaranteed. Prices drop as the event gets closer, and since this game is on Thursday, those prices already starting to be on the downslope there. I love this app because of the user interface, how easy it is to use, and the technology involved with it. For instance, you can see the view from your seats before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And they have flash deals, zone deals, just the great deals that makes Game Time really special, so much better than any other app in the ticketing marketplace. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, for $20 off. Terms apply. First purchase only. Thanks to Game Time Picks, you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, theater events, and more. That can be a part of an early holiday gift. What time is it? Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with today's sponsor. Next up here on the show, this is what the San Francisco 49ers must do to beat the Los Angeles Rams on Thursday Night Football. This is a really good matchup between a Niners team that played their best game of the season against Chicago in Week 14 and a Rams team who put up a 40-burger in outlasting a Super Bowl contender in the Buffalo Bills. And both these teams are jockeying for a playoff spot, maybe as a wild card team, most likely to try to win the NFC West, and both are chasing the Seattle Seahawks right now. Let's begin with this, how the Niners stack up. Offensively, even though they only scored 10 points against Buffalo and Green Bay in 2 of those 3 losses during that 3-game losing streak prior to beating the Bears, the Niners still 11th in points per game offensively at 23.7. They have moved the ball very well this year, 4th in yards per game at 378.5. They're a tick over 6 yards per play. That's number 2 in the NFL, so the explosive plays have been there. Number 7 on third downs at 43.7%, but just the 22nd ranked red zone offense at a shade under 53%. Good news for San Francisco, are they starting to turn the corner inside the 20? Against the number 1 ranked Bears red zone defense, San Francisco was 4 of 5 in that red area. On the defensive side of the ball for the Niners, they have certainly missed Nick Bosa as he's been out, but they did have a good game against Chicago, stopping the run, tackling, not giving up explosive plays, getting after Caleb Williams. They're only 21st in points per game at 23.7, identical to their points output on offense. That's why they've been hovering around 500 partially. They're 3rd in yards per game, 6th in yards per play, only 27th on third downs. They can't get off the field there. That's going to be a huge critical juncture and moment of this football game. Which team is going to be able to get off the field on third downs or offensively move the chains on third downs? And then in the red zone, the Niners, the 2nd worst red zone defense in the NFL. They're giving up a touchdown 72% of the time. That's 31st. Those same metrics for the Rams. Offensively, 16th in points per game, 15th in yards per game, 14th in yards per play, 22nd on third downs, 13th in the red zone. That is all very mediocre for Sean McVay's team. And then defensively, it's a young defense with a talented front that got after Brock Purdy a little bit earlier this year, but their numbers also just kind of pedestrian. 24th in points per game allowed, 27th in yards per game, 28th in yards per play, 20th on third downs, and 8th in the red zone. So that's big. They've been kind of bad/mediocre defensively, but when teams get inside that red area, they're able to force field goals. So with that, let's flip the page to my keys to the game. Those Niners defensive metrics, some of them very ugly. And all year, this has been a down year for what has been a proud Niners defense over the last few years. And so this matchup between Sean McVay and Nick Sorensen is a chess match that will probably favor Los Angeles, but can Nick Sorensen work off of what his defense did against Chicago? Because when this Rams offense is rolling, they're one of the most potent, high-octane offenses in the league. They are inconsistent but dangerous, and that inconsistency is why they're in the middle of the pack in a lot of offensive areas. But with what Los Angeles did against Buffalo, and that's a pretty solid defense, Matthew Stafford throwing for 320 yards. Puka Nacua, 12 catches, 6 runs, $162 through the air. Cooper Kupp, 5 catches for 92. Kyron Williams, he was running it effectively, 29 carries for 87 yards. The Rams do want to be balanced. They passed it 30 times, ran it 29. The defense did give up 6 touchdowns against Josh Allen, but that offense, they were really cooking against Sean McDermott's team. 2 key numbers for this Niners defense against the Bears that will have to repeat themselves going into this game against the Rams. The Niners missed only 4 tackles against Chicago. That was a season low. Pales in comparison to them missing 19 tackles against the Packers a couple of weeks ago in that awful, despicable, disgusting, pathetic effort. And then the Niners had 7 sacks of Caleb Williams. That's a bad Bears offensive line, but 7 sacks without Nick Bosa, that's pretty damn good. 3 of which for Yetur Gross-Matos, who had a hat trick. Another thing to look out for Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, and this Rams offense as a whole, it's the long ball against this Niners secondary. This is also where having Talanoa Hufanga back, making game-changing plays, being back there at safety, in addition to Malik Mustafa, and with Renardo Green now playing more, Deommodore Lenoir playing like an all-pro, Charvarius Ward doing solid as he comes back from missing a few games due to bereavement, that's where this Niners secondary could get a boost. But Stafford in that previous matchup against the Niners completed huge, clutch, momentum-tilting passes of 50 yards and 37 yards back in week 3. If the Rams are having success with that long ball, taking the top off of this Niners defense, could be a long night for Nick Sorensen's unit. Key to the game number 2, it's really this Niners rushing attack. Not having Isaac Guerendo, who might miss this game due to a foot sprain, could really hurt. He's day-to-day, but because this is a short week Thursday night game, that's a quick turnaround for the speedster and the 4th-round pick, who's a really capable runner and a smooth pass catcher out of the backfield. That dual-threat nature helped lift this Niners offense last week against Chicago. And this Rams defense against the run, they gave up 250 rushing yards 3 weeks ago to Saquon Barkley. The Niners don't have a Saquon Barkley because Christian McCaffrey is out, but Kyle Shanahan's offensive system usually bodes well in being able to have success on the ground. Any type of running back who's been back there, he's been able to have success regardless of who it is. Raheem Mostert, Elijah Mitchell, Christian McCaffrey, the current iteration of Isaac Guerendo and some of these backs on this team right now. Now the Rams have an opposing rush play percentage of 48.1%. That's 30th. So teams run it a lot against the Rams. They're 29th in rush attempts per game faced at 30.2. And the Rams are giving up 4.7 yards per carry. That's 24th. And then rushing yards per game, $141. That's 28th. And rushing touchdowns per game, 1. That's 19th. If the Niners can find success on the ground, what does it do? It keeps Matthew Stafford and that potent offense, which put up 44 against the Bills, on the sideline, and they can't find that groove or momentum ideally. And if Isaac Guerendo cannot play, Patrick Taylor will get the start. Keyshawn Vaughn, a former 3rd-round pick who's never really lived up to the expectations of a 3rd-round pick, he becomes RB2. And then Israel Abanikanda, who is a talented back. He had 20 touchdowns his final year at Pitt back in 2022. Niners signed him after he was waived by the Jets last week. I imagine that he could get some run as well as RB3. Key to the game number 3. I want to see Kyle Shanahan coach this game against the Rams like he coached that game against the Chicago Bears. His best game of the season. We saw screen passes, and the rate of screen passes this year have been down. I'm not sure why. It helps out your quarterback. It helps you pick up yards after the catch. It gets these blockers out in front. It's a staple of this offense. We saw what the Niners can do by running some screen passes. Guerendo, George Kittle, they were creative calls, and they yielded great results. Also, Kyle Shanahan was creative with his play calling and play designs instead of just forcing the ball to Christian McCaffrey and leaning on him to be special. But because you're without CMC, Kyle Shanahan had to hop in his creative duffel bag a little bit and put together a good game plan. And it was an awesome game plan. Niners won this game in the first half alone with how dominant they were and how they were humming. San Francisco, they've struggled in the red area all year. Against the Bears and that number 1 ranked red zone defense, 4 of 5 in the red area. I loved Kyle Shanahan's aggressiveness late in the game on 4th down. He said, Jake Moody, go out there and kick that 43-yard field goal. And then he thought it over. He said, you know what? Let me call a timeout. It's 4th and 1. Moody's a little bit shaky. So is Jake Elliott. And the Niners went for it on that 4th and 1. They converted what happened later that drive. Patrick Taylor, touchdown, boom. Game over. Aggressiveness. Put your nuts on the table. Instead of being conservative, I think Shanahan should do that more. So I love that. And then Shanahan also called pass plays, which allowed Brock Purdy to cook every blade of the grass. Brock Purdy was throwing balls in the flat. He was throwing ball down the sideline, down the number, in between the hashes, short, intermediate, long. And that's why Brock Purdy played his best game of the year. I also like the play action, both on the strong side, the naked side, some of the just nuances of the pass game. That was good stuff from Kyle Shanahan. Key to the game number 4. This pass game should be run through George Kittle and Javon Jennings. They are your 2 best receivers. I don't need to see carries go to Debo. Debo said, I'm fine this week on X. I'm just not getting the ball. That's cap. Debo Samuel's having a bad year. He's averaging 2.9 yards per carry. He's on pace to have just as many touches as he's had the last 2 or 3 years. He's averaging a career worst scrimmage yards per game, receiving yards per game. Kyle Shanahan's given him ample opportunities. His tackle-breaking numbers are not there. His separation numbers are not there. So, Debo, I don't know what you're thinking, but Kyle Shanahan, just because Debo complained, do not overcompensate in trying to make him happy. Run this pass game through your 2 best players in the air. That's George Kittle and Javon Jennings. Kittle is the best receiver on this football club, and he's a matchup nightmare. And he can be used in a variety of ways, in between the 20s and inside that red zone. The screen to Kittle was awesome. Some of the routes that he ran and the play designs with it, they were great. And you found great results. And Brock Purdy put it right in between that 8-5. And then for Javon Jennings, given his toughness, his stature, his physicality, it doesn't matter if he's open or not. And in a year where the Niners haven't had that receiver target separation, it hasn't mattered for Jennings because he'll still catch it. And he has a great relationship working with Brock Purdy. He's emerged as wide receiver 1 on this football team. Key to the game number 5. San Francisco has to play with desperation and urgency. Kyle Shanahan called a team meeting on Saturday night. He had Brock Purdy and Deommodore Lenoir, 2 young leaders for this team, address the team. George Kittle talked about that after the game on Sunday and said, we have to play desperate. Then John Lynch went on KNBR this week and said, yeah, these are our playoffs. We are in do-or-die mode right now. After Yetur Gross-Matos had a great performance against Chicago, he was mic'd up coming to the sideline, and he said, that's playoff win number 1. So the Niners are approaching the end of the regular season as the NFL playoffs, and they have to continue to play with that desperation and urgency, which they lacked all year. They had it against Chicago, and we saw what this team is capable of being. Predict the score, Rams, Niners, Thursday night. We're doing a watch party for this game right here on the channel. Can't wait for it. My prediction, look, if the Niners played like they did against Chicago, they have an opportunity to pick up their first win against a team with a winning record at the time that they play. They have not beat a team with a winning record this year at the time of that game. Now, Seattle now has a winning record. So do the Bucs. But the Rams right now are 7-6. I'm going San Francisco 28, Rams 25. I think the Niners win this football game. They also match up pretty favorably against the Rams. Don't forget to hop on board. Join us for our watch party. Show starts 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursday night. We'll see you there.